Hello again. This is end of day 23 of 40 days of drumming. Kind of a rough day today. Kind of a was dealing with my own disappointments in some ways. For one, more problems with like my bass drum technique. It was like by the end of the day, I just wasn't even playing. Normally, I have some just kind of simple bass drum patterns and stuff that I'll go through at the end of the day, but didn't really feel like I could even play those because my hip was just so sore and stuff. Um, I was just trying to do this real simple stuff like single hits, and my hips were just like screaming at me. My right hip. So at that point, I actually stopped for a little while and did some stretches. Um, my parents brought up some balls. Um, I have a big blue exercise ball that I've been using every day, usually several times a day, and I lay backwards over that. Um, so, kind of like a supported back bend, if you're thinking in yogi terms, and I'll gradually like start up with the ball up right at the base of my neck, and then gradually roll my back onto it so I'm laying over backwards. And that really helps kind of loosen up the muscles in my back, but it doesn't do much for my hips. Um, so I requested a different ball, and they ended up bringing up a couple different ones. One is a tennis ball, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with like laying on something hard like that, like a tennis ball on sore muscles, and you lay on them and it hurts, but you know, without uh, reacting to the pain, you're able to let that muscle release. If you're able to sit there and breathe and just be calm and not react, then the muscle kind of gets the signal that, oh, everything's okay. I don't need to hold on to this tension anymore, and it'll release. Um, so I'd used that a couple times on the hip, but then they also brought up like a bigger ball, like a, I don't know, volleyball sized ball, but it's one of those kids balls, and it's too big to do the pressure, like specific pressure, but it actually just felt good to kind of roll on that. So I was doing that for that hip. Um, yeah, and then just kind of thinking about how in general, I'm 23 days down on this project here, this experiment, and I don't really feel like I have anything concrete to show. Don't really feel like, hey, check out this thing that I worked out. That's not the idea behind it, but there's that part of me that like I'm going to go back to a community of other musicians and drummers, and they're going to see me play, and it's like, well, you sound the same, or, it just, I don't know. I gotta stop thinking about that stuff, but that does enter into my mind. Like I'm 23 days in, and what have I really done? I just feel like I've kind of been scratching at this and scratching at that. Had a few moments where, I felt like I got into a different mindset, but those seem few and far between, to be honest with you. Today I felt rather disconnected. My mind is going crazy. I feel like every time I make a deeper connection, my mind then steps up its game of trying to distract me. So now it's throwing all kinds of crazy stuff at me that is hard for me not to engage in, because it's stuff that I have an emotional connection to, or just whatever. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what that stuff is because it's highly personal stuff. But yeah, it definitely feels like the mind, and I guess that's the way of all those old kung fu movies and the video games where you're on this first level and you have to defeat this one guy, and he has certain things that he does and certain tricks, and then you defeat him and you have to go to the next level, and then the next guy is even harder. And so that's kind of what it is. I have these moments of connection and clarity and all that, and then the mind comes back even stronger. So now I have to up my game, and like recommit to the process, not get discouraged by hard days and what seems like setbacks with technique or whatever. Yeah, I guess on the brighter side of things, my last practice session, I decided that I was going to sit down at the kit and not use my right foot at all. Just, I'm not going to play bass drum. And at first it's like, well, what am I going to play? I can't play anything without my bass drum foot. But I found all kinds of stuff, and actually by the time I kind of try to do quiet time at like 9 o'clock, and by the time 9 o'clock came around, I hadn't even gotten through all the stuff that I had thought of that I could play and work on. Whereas when I first sat down, it's like, oh man, because a lot of my focus has been on my bass drum. I feel like that's one of the weakest parts of me as a drum kit player is my right foot. So that's where a lot of my focus is. And sat down and it's like, man, I can't play. At first it's like what I can't play. I can't do this. But then after getting into it, and the first exercise that I did was kind of like, I was still kind of in a bad mood, and I was just bored, and like, okay, I'm just going to do this, and this is really boring, and I'm not mentally engaging, so that's when my mind gets really distracted. But then I started to think about, oh, yeah, I can do this, and I worked on some left foot stuff. And then that opened up into another thing, and opened up into another thing, and so that was good. Kind of a good end to an otherwise frustrating day. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to see how my hip feels tomorrow. I suppose there's a bunch of stuff that I can do without using that foot at all and just give it some rest. Yeah. Crazy stuff, but I guess I'm crazy for doing this whole thing in the first place anyway, so. Alright, everybody. See you tomorrow.